Welcome to another Three Geeks conversation. My name is Jason. I'm joined by Justin. Today we are welcoming Berg to the show. Greg, how are you doing?
Terrific. Good reaching you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I like to ask, what made you want to get into acting and voiceover work?
Well, it's interesting how it developed because it wasn't just I want to do this and now I'm doing it. It took time. I moved to Hollywood at when I was almost 21, and it could have been a visit or it could have been my home. And I made it my home because I knew it was going to take time. I was light years away from being anywhere near professional, and I tested the waters and I liked it and I kept at it. And uh, it kind of bit me to continue on. And I said, yeah, I could do this for a living. I mean, I think I once saw Mel Blanc on a talk show, Mel Blanc, the king of voices from when I was growing up. And as he was being interviewed, they asked him what he did. And he says, it's fun being able to talk like a cartoon for a living. So that kind of stuck in my mind. And any way I could have gotten it, I tried my best to do what I had to do. And there's things fell into place. I originally came out here to do comedy acting, and that was the late 80s. I took some work at the Comedy Store to get my footing on how a comic's supposed to work and all that. I didn't get into stand-up comedy, but they had sketches being performed at the Comedy Store. And so I joined a group with another improv actor and then two comics. One of them was Bill Hicks. And so he was trying out what it was like to do sketches as well. So I was there to learn. And about that time, I had my eye on doing utility work as an actor, meaning maybe being a waiter in one sketch or scene, or the next scene being like a clerk or something, or an airline pilot or something, and then making the scene funny. Well, right about that time, when I was really ready to get my footing and meet people to hire me, that business slowed up and then eventually went out of business. As you know, part of it was variety. So I got my taste of that as well ahead of time. But since it wasn't going anywhere, I had to find something to do. And then I tied in my acting towards voicing, and that stuck. And I kept getting another voice project here and there. And it all came together.
That's awesome. You mentioned the Comedy Store. Do you have any fun Mitzi or Pauly Shore stories for us?
As far as stories go, no, she liked me from the start, because a lot of people fret saying, will she like me? If not, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But she was great with me. I didn't hang out with her. I just did what I did, and she would plug me into being an MC at one of her other locations, and then occasionally at the main store. And all the time I was learning. And isn't that great when you can get paid to learn something?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
So I got to ask, because IMDb is not always accurate, but Revenge of the Nerds, did you really do the voice of the robot?
Not the robot. That was the main character in Revenge of the Nerds. But they did have a scene where there were three robots that were emulating the Three Stooges. And so they had to talk, or they had one of them talking, and I was playing Larry. But I think they had somebody else doing the other characters as well. So I was one of the Larry robots, and then I believe I was doing that, because this goes way back to the 80s. I know I also was a voice of a guy falling off a bicycle, and with the main movie, as they played it, they said we didn't have anybody say anything as he's falling, so they had me being his voice as well.
That's awesome.
And that's getting
How do you,
into doing voices for movies. Yeah.
so going into a movie role or an animated role, how do you find the voices?
Ah, that's the trick. Um, I never thought in my life I would be doing so many voices as I've done. So I was saying I never believed I can do so many voices, but again, my mind wasn't shutting it off, saying, "Oh, you can't sound like that person or that." Uh, but I did know people who had done it, and either they played with it and faked it, or they perfected it. So that's what I spent a lot of my time doing, because I'm also considered a multi-voice talent. Some people just do the one voice and they do fine. The guy who did Garfield's voice in the cartoon, Lorenzo Music, he's a great character actor who we lost, but that was his voice. He didn't have to make up a voice to do it. So in my case, I just played with different voices that I thought I can try to imitate. Uh, all that gets kind of technical if I had to explain this, because I do give speeches and I ask, do you want to know how to do voices, or how I've done them, or what I do, or the business of voicing? So there's so many aspects I can talk about. But based on your question, yeah, I didn't know I can do so many voices, but I worked at perfecting them, because you are up against your competition, and some people do have voices that they can do as well, or come close to. And that's an art in itself as well. I could do voices for animation. I also can gear myself to do voices for exact voice matching of celebrities in movies when they can't get the celebrity to come back and maybe record one line. So they have somebody like me come in and do their voice. I've done John Travolta's voice for Chains of Gold. I was Harvey Keitel's voice in a movie that they were testing to see what they were going to do with it. Yeah, so very many celebrities here and there. I think it was Matthew McConaughey in one movie, and Kiefer Sutherland, Donald Sutherland, Robert De Niro. That was another one.
That's incredible to me. So I'm going to do two-part question. One, did it ever freak you out when you mimic someone's voice? Be like, oh, I sound like Robert De Niro. Like, does that ever like weird you out? Like that you can mimic it so well that it's like very, very passable.
There's an art to doing other people's voices, because I know some people they didn't do the voices well, but depending what the project was, they accepted it and let them go. And others, you can just tell that they were awful at it. But if it was a major motion picture, yeah, they needed you to audition first, and whether it matches the sound that they're trying to match. Because there are also other actors I've done voices for that people wouldn't know. But to me, I would listen to it and work at it. I pride myself on being a professional at it. So I'm not going to be hired and say, no, here's what I think he sounds like, and argue with it. If I sound like the person, I tell them, you've got the right guy, and I'm not going to waste their time and just say, let's keep trying or whatever. But it does take long sessions for them to match and insert where they're supposed to insert to cover what they were trying to do. So it turns into a job of matching voices as well.
That's awesome. Now, because it feels like you talk about this a lot, if someone was aspiring, let's say they're watching this podcast and say, I want to be a voice actor one day, what would be the first like 3 steps or 2 steps or whatever? Like what's see if you like it, see like if you can do multiple voices, like what's the thing that they should be doing?
Well, in my case, I'm open to anybody with questions, and if I can say something that they need to know. Setting the groundwork for doing voices. I know some people that said they never took acting before, and that usually is the number one hint to doing anything in the voice field or acting field. Take lessons, but some people were natural, and I don't know if it takes them longer to do a voice and finally get it, or if they just happen to talk and sound like that. Some people are lucky that way too. But if you're doing it for a living, I've been doing this 40 years plus, but it's almost like opening a flower. There's another row of petals there to work with. So it started with me doing acting and then comedy acting. And then when things changed in the business, I was led to do voicing for commercials and cartoons. Well, I've done both at the beginning, and then it turned into doing voices for industrial projects, my straight voice for narration of commercials, or a straight character, a straight voiced character. And I just keep enjoying this because the creativity never stops. And that's so for starting off, I'd say, I would direct you to doing acting and taking improv classes, because sometimes something might come up that you can improv in a commercial or a cartoon, and that's another tool to use. I get approached by people who do voices. They probably sound like I would have been when I was at my home base in Ohio. And I took the next step as to what do I do with this, and it led me to California. And now the trend is changing a little bit, and people can do voices from home wherever they're at, and it's accepted. So taking away a little bit of the worry of people saying, "Oh, I've got to be here to do this or that." I think in animation they need you here if you're going to go animation, but you can do voices from wherever you're at these days. But if you have any questions about that, I mean, because I've given seminars for 70 minutes of talking about my work, or how they can do the work, and give them ideas. But I'm pro into encouraging people and inspiring people to either like what I do or like what they do, and pursue it.
That's awesome.
So what's the process for you when you go in for Little Muppet Monsters? Fozzie Bear is a well-known character at this point, and like what's the process for you when you go in an audition? And what was that experience?
Well, the main
like?
show started off as Muppet Babies, because there was a movie called Muppets Take Manhattan, where they had a dream, or a sequence where they thought they were babies once again. And it was a cute segment, so they got the idea, let's animate this. And I think it's one of Jim's first animated shows. And so as they put it together, they held the auditions to say, do these puppets, but do them as kids. And at the time, I think the voice business was a go-to for a lot of matured adult voicers. And so when they needed somebody to do the Muppets as kids, I once again understood that I had to practice it and get as close as possible, and hope they liked it. And that's what I did. I took an audition and said, okay, so Fozzie, grown-up Fozzie, now I can do grown-up Fozzie. Whoa, waka waka. And then to think of him as a kid, I had to tighten up my voice a little bit and do a little baby talk, and I can still do a baby Fozzie too. And then there was Baby Scooter, who wrote Fozzie's jokes on his computer all the time. So I said, that's because grown-up Scooter was more like this, and says, Miss Piggy, you're on in 5 more minutes. And so I made him a little whinier and a kid-like, and that's what got me my parts.
I loved that show as a kid. I loved the Muppet Babies. So thank you for taking me back there.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to throw out the first voice. But yeah, when I've given speeches, I mean, I really got technical into, I think I was at a con at the time giving a panel talk, and I stressed how, yes, they knew me for Fozzie Bear and Scooter, and then I had a show called Huckleberry Hounds as a teenager called Yo Yogi, where all the characters that were created that I grew up watching were teenagers. And again, I fit in. But then I also studied with Dawes Butler, who was the voice of the original Huckleberry Hound. and he had passed away, but they wanted to do the show and they needed somebody who can match his voice and or match a young version of him. And that's how I got that particular one. But for people that do voices or starting, they usually do probably what I've been doing, where I was sitting in a room and just talking to myself in different voices. But then I also had equipment, very cheap equipment, like a cassette recorder at the time, to listen and record and perfect it and make sure it's acceptable. And some people might say, oh, I don't do particular write-on voices of characters, but that doesn't matter. There's a business where they want you to come in with your own character, so you can be a bad-sounding main character, but that's a whole new character for you.
That's awesome. Do you have any? Jim Henson's such a big titan of the Muppet. Were you able to interact with Jim at all? Through
I met Jim twice. When he came into town, he put a party together for all those involved in the Muppet Babies show because it was on for so long. And then he came to a studio one day while we were all there recording to watch how a session goes, and any questions he had or comments or whatever he would give to the directors. So I can't remember any that were major to change what we were doing. So I think we all lucked out and had our, and we were picked perfectly for what they needed.
Yeah.
But Jim was great. I mean, people I know who met him just said he's a terrific guy. And I said, that's what I had hoped to do too. And that's how I dedicate myself to the fans and to my work.
Awesome. Cool.
Well, speaking of my childhood, you also were the voice of Donatello, Bebop, and a few other characters on Ninja Turtles. Can you tell us about that experience?
Called what some people get the understanding. What I did was the alternative voice, which meant the original voice couldn't make the session, so they brought somebody like myself in to sound as close to the turtle as possible. And then they said, oh, by the way, the guy who did the voice of Donatello who also did Bebop's voice. So I luckily, at that point in my career, I can adjust my voices, and I tried sounding as close to Bebop as well, and still do conventions and all that, doing these things. But doing Ninja Turtles, I mean, they did the bulk of the work. They were about 200 shows, 200 episodes or more. And I did a handful of them. Later on in the show, they brought people in to revoice some of the other turtles as well, for whatever reason that they couldn't make their session. So that's something that's done, but this one's pretty noticeable because it's a hit show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm glad you like the voices that you heard me doing. I had recently found a cassette tape that I recorded when I was 19, and it was just full of about 30 different voices talking to each other or just by themselves, and many characters, many cartoon characters, and some I tried to impersonate. And at that point, the original voices were maybe in their 40s, 50s, and there I was at 19 trying to match or do whatever I can to sound like them. And so for the people, again, looking to do voices for animation, get as many as you can, or get your strong ones together and put them on a tape as a professional demo tape eventually. But don't put the tape together before you take the lessons, because you're putting your cart before your horse.
Are those tapes usually like all well-known voices you can recreate, or do you throw in unique voices you can do, like the range of the voices you can do, even if they don't match up with like a famous voice?
No, when you do a demo tape, the casting people are listening that you can adjust your voice if needed. In animation, they the studio doing a cartoon can use you for 3 different voices in a show. So if you do many voices, it's good for them because then they won't have to hire somebody just for that particular character. So yeah, people know me for my main characters, which were Donatello and Bebop, and I was on The Simpsons. I surprised people telling them I was in Toy Story, as different voices in the background that you might hear, and that surprises them too. But I took this on as a business rather than being famous for one particular voice. But there are people like that too. So the field is open for people who want to do voiceovers. You see many of these advertisements now saying, get into voiceovers if you want something to do.
Mhm.
But I'm doing it full time. So some of the people just starting might have to do it on the side until they latch onto something that's permanent.
Sure.
So
Well, go ahead.
you were in the Rat Pack, which is one of my favorite movies. Not a lot of people
There
talk
you
about
go.
it. They should, because I really like that movie. But were you a fan of those guys before, like going into the movie, like Sinatra, Dean, Sammy, Peter?
Well, in particular, anybody in the acting business, I just love whether they said they were 1 to 5 lines in the smaller parts, or if they were famous. I just happened to luck out in my early life. As a teenager, I worked at a radio station that interviewed celebrities. And these
Mhm.
weren't just somebody that's local. These were everybody from Jamie Farr to Jerry Lewis to the big hits of the 70s. These were mainstream celebrities. So I would either watch them as close as I can to absorb from them, almost like an acting lesson, as to what they do, how they conduct themselves in an interview. And eventually, sometimes I'd say, I really like this guy. I sure hope I can talk like him and try out. And sometimes I miss, and sometimes I hit him right on. For people that, again, after doing this 40 years, there's so many ways I can use my voice that you just never know. So I kind of put it in the back of my mind that I can match another celebrity that you guys don't even know about. I have some obscure ones, and that sometimes helps too, because some of them are gone, and they would say, is there anybody anywhere that can sound like this person? We want to clean up a movie or something like that. That again, what you mentioned was Rat Pack was a main voice. I was the voice of Eddie Cantor. And because the movie was supposed to take place when he was around and he was in the audience, and so I did a shout out in his voice from off stage. And there are some other movies I've done that for as well, with either no named characters, and they can't put that in the credits saying the voice you heard in the back of the room was Greg Berg or whatever. But if I do it as ADR for doing various people, which is known in the business as ADR for automatic dialogue replacement, meaning if they're in an airport and there's maybe hundreds of people walking around, they bring people in like me to change my voices sometimes and be one of the characters. So that's what happened in various movies that I land as well.
What was it like being on The Simpsons? You mentioned it briefly that you voiced a character there. Was that pretty sweet? I have to imagine it would be, but
It depends what the project is too. There's so many ways that I'm learning as I go along. One time I was the voice of a robot for a game show, and I figure, or the average person, or maybe they can't be average to land a particular project like that, because yes, I'll be the voice of a robot. They wanted me to sound like the original toy, which they couldn't bring the original guy over to be the voice in a number of shows and over a number of weekends. So they brought me over because I was local, and I had to match the robot's voice, but technically speaking, I couldn't mess up the line, or if I could, they would go back and re-record, but I didn't even want to think that I would have to do that. But I was the voice of this robot, and then the script they give me, though, was opening of the show and answers to questions. But I had to have about 4 different stacks of paper to jump to read if they got the question wrong or what the right answer was, and repeat the proper answer, and also announce the different prizes people won. So when it comes to doing voices, you're either, that I was there on set. Everybody was doing their job, working as the announcers of the show, and running the equipment. So, a lot of things are on my back to make sure this is well done. So that kind of stuff happens. I once was a talking penguin at a Bob Hope Christmas show, and that was a blast working with. But they brought me and the other voice talent together in to be the voice, and we weren't there when Bob was there. But there have been situations where they need you to be in a particular scene and get the line right and
Sure.
deliver properly when some celebrity is there.
It's awesome.
I'm
Like I
curious
worked on
about
a show called Silver Spoons years ago, and I was supposed to be an on-camera actor, but then somebody from the show wanted to say the funny line that I was supposed to give. And so the producer made it up to me and had me be a call-in person on a segment where Ricky Schroeder, who was the star of the show, was taking phone calls at a radio station. So I was one of the callers that call into him. But I did that on the side while he was taking the calls. So sometimes you are there with the actors, and sometimes they just section you off to hopefully deliver what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Well,
And this
my
gets
last question
kind
for
of deep.
you.
40 years of doing this.
Oh, for sure.
So my last question is, it's not anything to do with your career, but do you have a favorite movie that you liked growing up or you like now?
I had a favorite actor, but it was more of a preference of what I would enjoy seeing and all that. And that was actor Lance Kerwin, who recently died. He was around my age when I was growing up, and he more or less inspired me to move out here. And then who knew where I was going to go with that? Well, I was very fortunate enough to meet him the year before he died, and told him he was responsible for having me there. He hadn't worked for at least 5 years or so before meeting, and he was in a whole other category as well. He kind of looked like Ron Howard at this point, and which is good, but it wasn't the same person that I remember watching and saying I want to do what he's doing, and maybe be in a scene with him, because we could relate as same ages and whatever characters we came up with. But that's life in the business.
Yeah,
But so
makes sense.
seeing a movie, I can even say one of my favorite movies is Oliver. That another actor that made me want to do what I'm doing, Jack Wilde, who passed away as well. But he was a little bit older than I was, and every time I watch movies like that, it inspires me to keep at it.
That's awesome. What my last question for you, what was Transformers like? That's a big franchise. What was it like jumping into Transformers?
Right. Well, this was at a point where it turned into a movie, because there are these cons that feature performers from that particular cartoon show. And I worked in the movie Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon. And that was an audition process. I auditioned on a December day, and I was the voice of Igor, which was a pet of one of the Decepticons. And so he basically, I was his pet and going, yes, master, yes, master. And little dialogue, but it was needed. And
Yeah.
from what I know is they didn't kill him off yet, so hopefully they could bring him back. It's a different reaction from people watching the movies compared to the cartoon. I noticed when the cartoon came out, it was in my early days, and I was still learning the business and didn't master it as best I could, because I was being myself. And I auditioned for, it was either Transformers or G.I. Joe, something that was really tough. Transformers, I look at who got it, and they were some hardcore actors or people who could manipulate their voices and attitudes. And I was still learning that because I was used to being funny. And here, Transformer cartoons were being auditioned, and I was told that I was too nice by one guy who was casting, which is why they needed somebody more rough and gruff, just like G.I. Joe. The same guy was casting, and he said this to me because the characters were, blow him up, I'll get him, all this stuff I normally never was exposed to. So as I got older, I learned now how to add character to various voices. So yeah, working with Transformers is a blast. I was just working with the movie franchise compared to the cartoons where people were looking.
It's fun. That's awesome.
Well, Greg, where can everybody find you online?
I have my email, which is idovoices@yahoo.com, where I take appointments if people want to bring me in for one of their cons. I have a rep for appearances, and that's pinkdaisyentertainment.com. And I'm on Facebook, but I'm slowly leaving that because I'm finding many people in the business are doing that as well, because it's just not what it used to be when we joined. We thought it'd be some information. Then it got into put downs and fake videos and all that. So if anybody wants to just reach me, they can Facebook me, and if I get to it, I will answer them back. Or if they want to write me an email, or else they can just ask me for an address if they want to buy a picture by mail, and we can talk about that or whatever they have. Some people have sent me various items that they always wanted to have signed by the original people. So if that helps. Yeah, I'm also considering a website where it could be a go-to for news and information plus samples of my work, but hopefully people can get it when they have heard of me or have asked somebody else about me. So,
well, thank you so much, Greg. Everybody like, comment, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.